greetings in Tamil. Thandanattom என்று சொல்லியே வில்லினில் பாட ஆமா வில்லினில் பாட வந்தருள்வாய் கலை மகளே. That's how I would start telling the story to you in a traditional Tamil way from deep South India, where I was born in 1730. Yes, almost 300 years ago. My parents named me Velu Nachiyar, but you can call me Velu. It's actually a boy's name in Tamil. It is the name of a young and handsome god of war, Vel Muruga. I loved the name, and my parents gave me so much freedom because I was their only child and they wanted to raise me like a boy. I got to learn to ride horses. I learned the martial arts and I enjoyed it so much. But I was also smart, they tell me. I learned many languages like French, English, because the traders were bringing them in. Also learned Urdu from the north, from the Mughals, and regional languages. But my favorite language was my native tongue, Tamil. That was like honey to my lips. I had a wonderful childhood. And at 16, I was married off to a neighboring ruler, the king of Sivaganga. The kingdom was named after the Hindu god Shiva, actually the father of Vel Muruga. Shiva is supposed to have had the Ganga river coming down his head, a very auspicious name. And I must say my husband was a few years older than me. He had another wife, but I didn't mind. He was kind to me and I was treated very well. I grew to love him because he gave me a lot of power and importance. He realized that I could help him rule his kingdom, that I could negotiate for him, knowing all these languages. So I soon became his Rani or his queen, Rani Velu Nachiyar. Nachiyar, by the way, means goddess. Well, things were going okay, but I noticed that some traders were coming in. At first, they wanted our silks, our beautiful cottons like this, and they, of course, wanted our fragrant spices. And we welcomed them with open arms. Though they looked very different from us, they were white-skinned with yellow hair, and they kept stomping into our palace with those heavy boots. Soon they wanted more than just these. They wanted to control us. Yes, they got together with a weak ruler from a nearby place called the Nawab of Arcot, who betrayed us. And soon these traders from the British East India Company were all over our kingdom, making all kinds of demands. Yes, they wanted us to pay them a tribute to protect us. And they wanted to tax our farmers who toil day and night. That didn't sound fair to me. This was our land, our rivers, our fields, and the sweat and blood of our people. How did they have a right to any of this? My husband and I resisted, and we said, "Oh, go away," and we shut the door on them. But that didn't turn out well, because one day, as I was riding my horse out in the fields, checking on the farmers and assuring them that we would protect them, I heard the most devastating news. My husband, who had gone to the temple to worship, of course, leaving his weapons behind, was brutally attacked and murdered by two English officers, Smith and Bonjour, who stomped in with their weapons and brutally shot him. I was devastated. I was a widow with a young child. I could go back and probably surrender to them, but I knew that they would kill me and my child. So I decided to turn my horse around and I went with a band of my faithful followers. We all rode through the dense forests and we arrived at a neighboring fort. And there we were given shelter. But the next few months were really very, very difficult. It was not like living in a palace. We had to go from fort to fort, fugitives hiding because we knew that the company's soldiers were on our trail. In fact, my very devoted bodyguard was murdered because she wouldn't reveal our location. And it broke my heart, but I was all the more determined to do something about it. I also heard that they had taken over Sivaganga, my beautiful kingdom, and the Nawab was now calling it Hussein Nagar, a Muslim name. And they had wiped out our treasury. They were harassing our farmers, and people were sick and dying. And I had to do something about this. I had an idea. There was this ruler called Hyder Ali who ruled a big area in the Deccan, the plateau that divides North and South India. I took my horse and I went. I went to him, and he was willing to listen to me because he was particularly impressed that I spoke Urdu. And I said, Salam alaikum. And I explained my predicament. And thankfully, he was willing to support us. He promised us shelter, soldiers, and of course, most importantly, weapons. And I knew I would be safe with him. He treated me like a daughter and even built a temple so that we Hindus could worship. Well, the next few years, we trained hard. I gathered together an army of talented women, and I named this Udayal army after that bodyguard who had sacrificed herself for me. And I was able to teach them all the martial arts. And we also got to learn how to use other weapons like cannons. And we were training in our saris like this, wrapping it up securely, our beautiful cotton saris that were so comfortable. And soon my daughter was old enough to watch us, and she was inspired, and she was also becoming brave like us. Well, we trained hard and waited for an opportunity. And that came up after 8 years. Yes, I heard from my spies that the Nawab who had occupied my palace and fort was allowing Hindu women to come in just once in the year to worship at the temple on the palace grounds. And we also heard there was a big armory behind that temple. And so my commander-in-chief, Kuili, and I came up with a plan, and we were ready to implement it on the eve of that festival to the goddess. That's, this time of year, right? So what did we do? We started from our fort. We started riding. We went towards my beloved Shivaganga, chanting a war cry to my god of war, Vel Muruga. We said, Vel Muruga, Vel Muruga, Vetri Vel, Shakti Vel, Jnana Vel, Veera Vel. We chanted through the night, and early morning we reached the outskirts of Shivaganga. My army hid behind all the trees, and we dozen women in our simple saris, we went through the gates and we went to the temple and merged with the local women. Nobody knew that we had weapons hidden in our saris. And then, while we were praying, my commander-in-chief, Kuili, she went outside to check out the armory. And she didn't return for a while. So I went outside and I looked for her. And there I saw her doused in oil, carrying an oil lamp from the temple. And before I could call out to her, she had set herself on fire and jumped into the armory. There was a terrible explosion and destruction, and people ran here and there. There were no human lives lost except for Kuili, who had martyred herself. Well, I didn't have time to mourn. I had to move on and complete her vision. We signaled to our army to come in, and they all came, the infantry, the cavalry, and we started fighting with the Nawabs and the company soldiers. I must say, they were not prepared and they didn't have any reinforcements. So soon they were under our control. And in this year, 1780, I finally achieved my vision. Yes, everybody was defeated, and the enemies had to either flee or they lay dead. And the Nawab, of course, was the first one to leave. And then I was face to face with the two British who had killed my husband. And as I was about to kill them, the wisdom of my elders came back to me, and I decided to let them go after negotiating a deal with them that they wouldn't come back. And they didn't for the next 10 years at least. And I ruled and I restored everything to Shivaganga. And more than anything else, the dignity and the freedom of my people. So I would like to leave you with a wish for a long life and harmony in this day and age. And here it goes. Variyave pallandu kalam, pallandu pallandu variyave. Ah, oh, ah.